paying thousands of dollars in
That's a good idea. I'm just gonna grab my cup.
Yeah, for sure.
BigCheckStore.com.
Right?
Isn't that funny? You know?
Yeah.
I
My
know,
grandmother
it's called
taught me a song that she made me
BigCheckStore.com.
sing
And
every
actually,
morning when I
all
was
the thousands of people. Donations.
Yeah.
Golf charity or whatever, that's where they got it to.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
But it sounds funny, but it really is.
They just try to get their eyes on it.
But
So they
you
can
can,
discriminate.
if you want, you can get a
We've
right
been talking, I have clients
I don't do
to
that.
esta casa
because
haya. So I'm like, whoa,
like,
what's that
we'll
mean?
actually display
What do
a
you mean?
check.
It's-
No, usually the property manager official
A lot
wants
of
to.
them display the check.
Never
Alright,
wants
we're
to go to the house.
starting.
Well, I want it online.
Crazy, right?
One without ya.
Ready to negotiate, Janice? Ready.
Some days I'm not ready to deal with these people.
Before we plunge back into the meat of this, and I don't mean the meat on your sandwiches, although that would be really good too. How nice is this? Having lunch and having breakfast. Andre, I'm going to ask you to share your favorite negotiating book, because it is a good one, and tell them what it is you like about it.
Never split the difference.
Yeah.
By far.
That's awesome.
That's it's one of my favorite books of all time. You know, up there with How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I really liked it because, one, I listened to it on Audible first, and then I tried a few of the tactics, and it worked. And I was like, oh, like, because I didn't believe in it. And then I listened to it again, got a little more, tried some more tactics, and it worked again. Both in personal life and business life. And then I bought the book, and I never buy a book if I read it on Audible or listen to it on Audible. But this one was the only book I've ever done that with. And I read that again. I read it like, you know, read. And it's still, like, I'm still picking up nuggets. And every now and then I go back and reference it. You know, so I found a lot of useful, like, real time in my business situations from that.
So give us one and only one tip from Never Split the Difference.
When my clients ask me to rebate them commission. So they'll ask me to rebate, you know, percentage or an amount or whatever when I'm representing a purchaser. And I'm like, you know, let me check Remax Gateway. We absolutely have some flexibility. We're not like discount brokers, but I can absolutely get back with you on that. And whatever amount they're asking, I usually cut that in like less than half, like 40% or so.
Never
So I'll be
split
like-
the difference.
So yeah, exactly. So I'm like, you know, after discussing with my team and my brokerage and just making sure that the numbers are right, I can give you, you know, $472.36. So I give like a very odd number, and they're like, oh, okay. Like, and I'm like, yeah, you know, we're calculating and absolutely, I can even round it up to 50 cents. You know, that's what I'm able to do.
You just pull that number out
And
of the
I'll-
air.
Well, no, like if
No,
it's
you actually do it,
1%, if it's 1%, like I'll give them like 40%, right? Or half of that, or 40% of that 1%. But I give like a weird quirky number
Okay.
to make it seem like we were like really sharpening the pencil before we got back to it. I'll get that broker credit letter together for you right now if that's okay. And it's one thing, tell me, yes? Okay, cool, all right. Walking into an appointment, I'll let you go. Close the deal, get off the phone.
And there you go. And how is that for a
And I
great
like
tip?
too that you're calling them back and giving it to them like you just got the info rather than like the next time you see them and say, oh yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, get it
Just one
done,
word.
talk about it.
really excited.
For listing presentations, I don't, like a lot of agents are like, oh, I'll do it for X%, or I'll do it for this percent, or I'll give you a discount of this percent. I really try to do it, you know what, I'll do $1,000 off my personal listing commission, or my, or, you know, I'll do $1,500. So instead of giving away $4,000 by giving 1% off or whatever, I'm doing $1,000 or $1,500, and I always use, I will give it off my personal commission, you know, even with my donations. This is coming from my personal pot, not from Remax or not from this person. Remax is still gonna get the same amount, but it's coming from my personal amount.
I like
This
that
is
verbiage.
what I actually
Remax is
roll
still
over.
gonna get the same amount,
Yeah,
but
I mean, you know, they
I
don't.
like it.
But it's one of
No,
those
no, I
where
agree.
when you do a dollar figure, it's hard for them to look, you know, hey, I'm giving you $1,500 off, does that number sound good to you? Some of them will be like, well, if you did the percentage, it'd be higher, but a lot of them are like, wow, okay, that makes sense.
And a lot of folks really don't stop to think what it is they're asking for.
You're
Because
taking my money.
their 1% may be your 50%. Their 1% may be your 33%. Their so, and everyone understands what I'm saying there. Depending on what the full brokerage fee is, they say discount by 1%. You'd be glad to discount by 1% of the sale price of the house. You know? Honestly, their 1% of the sale price of the house is not 1% of the brokerage fee. And so they say it's only 1%. It's not 1%. It's not 1%.
I had a lady the other day said, well, you know, we really like you, but the commission is really important to us. I think, funny, it's really important to me too.
Did everyone hear the words?
And I just kind of let it sit there.
And you both stared at each other for 15
A little
minutes
bit.
in silence.
And I said, you know, I understand.
Whoever blinks first remakes the most money.
This is how I earn my living.
Yeah. And if you can negotiate your own commission,
That's
stand
it.
strong with it versus somebody else who just gives it away, they're gonna give your house away.
And that's exactly what I said. I said, how would it look if I just gave up because you asked?
And they're like, but everybody does it.
I haven't heard back from her, by the way. But
Well, here's the thing. We all know.
Right. I lost that listing, but.
I've lost control. It's after lunch. Trust is my time. So here's the thing. Really, sometimes less is more. Sometimes we try to explain way too much to people, and we sound like we're defensive. The truth is, the commission is very important to them, and it's also important to you. I tried to come in with something that was fair, and I hope that we can work together. Are there any other questions you have before we go ahead and take a look at how we're going to get the property sold? Would you mind if we talk about that before we address anything else? If we can talk about how I go about earning this, I'd feel a lot better before you start slashing it up. I didn't say it that way. So, it is negotiating a lot of things, and these same techniques can be used for negotiating on behalf of a client, as well as negotiating on behalf of yourself when it's a brokerage fee. So we've been talking a little bit about what we need to do, and part of it's in preparation, understanding what you're walking into, knowing what the goal is, understanding what the goal of the negotiation is. The problem with our getting listings is this. Sometimes the goal that we set for ourselves is to get the listing signed. What's the problem with that as a goal?
You've reached your goal before you've actually gotten started.
I mean, if you have
You've
so
reached
many-
the goal before you even got started, because in the end, you'd like to get a listing signed that can be
Sold.
sold. Oh, and go to closing.
Right.
That would be really cool. That would be kind of, so it's really thinking through, what am I gonna do here? So we've done a little bit of talking about, well, did it go off on me? Uh-oh. Well, that's nice. I would rather it didn't go to sleep on me. Thank you. Oh,
That took a lot of TV.
What do you want to watch?
what do I?
What are we gonna do now?
Ronnie's
It's a lot
kid
of
is like,
TV.
man, get out of the way. I got it.
Feel the need to.
Of course. PC? Yes. Thank you. Vanya, thank you so much. So, let's go ahead and look into what gets, we've talked about the fact that what gets in the way of negotiations is often
And other people.
ego or emotion is what often gets in the way. And this is talking about us and the other negotiator. And, yeah, Kimberly, you and Janice have both mentioned that we'd like to make that other person be good. Here's what I'll tell you. You can influence other people, you don't control them. The only one you control is you, and I'm not always so good at controlling me. So, we work with what we have, we do the best we can to influence them. It's all about the other negotiator. If they don't know how to work with you, it's going to make things a rougher ride. Joe alluded to this. Understanding with whom you are working is going to be key. But how do you understand, how do you get to understand the other? Ooh, go right ahead, Tom. How do you get to know anything about the other negotiator?
Talk to them.
Hello. It's talk to them. Who said ask questions? Now, Penny, it's engaging in a conversation. And yet, Tom had said earlier, information is key. So here, let's talk about engaging in conversation.
They like to text and email and don't like to pick up the phone. All right.
That is true. Sometimes folks like to text or email and they'd rather not pick up the phone. And sometimes we simply have to look for something that needs greater clarification. And we have to express that in text or email in order to be able to get through on the phone. Is to say, you know, I'm having a little bit of difficulty. I wonder if this is something we could work through a lot more quickly. If we could chat for just a moment. I feel like it's going to take us forever here. And just being willing to say that. So the fact is, we say engage in conversation, and conversation could be text. It is true that text conversations are much more easily misunderstood, especially when it comes to emotion and understanding what the personality is you're dealing with. I was told that email and text don't have a tone of voice.
Yes, they do.
Thank you. I was told they don't have a tone of voice. The unfortunate truth is they do. But who assigns the tone of voice? The recipient. The recipient. And so, that means that when we are using email or text to try to bridge, we need to be careful to go overboard. Here are just little phrases. We're almost there. I'm so anxious to work this out with you. Give me some other phrases that help. Yeah, I really want to work. I love working with you. I really want to work this out. We're almost there.
Our goal is in sight.
The goal is in sight.
Almost across the hard work.
What did you?
Just following up, almost across the finish line.
Almost across the finish line.
Thank you for all your hard work. We're almost there.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Penny, I love that. Thank you for all your hard work. We're almost there. Putting that in writing, whether it's email or text, takes a little bit longer. And text was meant to be so nice and short. The fact is, there are things that it's not worth cutting out because you're trying to bridge into a conversation. It's in a conversation that you have with people that you find out who they really are. And so it is having the conversation. When we talk about being a good conversationalist, what does a good conversationalist do exceedingly well? Thank you. They listen exceedingly well. What sort of questions do they ask?
Open-ended.
Yeah. some would say open questions, questions that are easy for the other person to answer and that require a little bit of thought and engagement. Thought and engagement. It's also nice to ask questions that allow them to put themselves in a good light. Oh yeah, it's just smart to ask questions that allow them to put themselves in a good light. So it's not always you telling them what's good about them. And by the way, you don't have to give people insincere flattery. You tell them what is really good about them. And if you watch carefully enough, we all have something good about us. We really do. So it's watching for that. It's understanding with whom you're dealing in terms of, do they get volatile? Do they take things personally? Are they even keeled? Are they supporting their client, or do they really believe in their client's position? It's asking the right questions, and it does take time, and patience pays and speed kills. Please understand that most of the other agents you deal with may not have been trained as negotiators. And they hear the word negotiate, and they hear something different from what you're hearing. What could that word imply to some people? Fight, fight, fight. I love it.
Manipulation.
Manipulate. Manipulate, manipulate. So fight them, manipulate them.
Give something up.
Oh, I like that,
You're asking me
Robin.
to give something.
You're asking me to give something up.
I'm
Asking me
giving
to.
something.
It's not even you. It's your client. Oh, never mind. So the fact is, we need to know to the best of our ability where this person is coming from, because we can't start to build trust and rapport on which to clear the stage for negotiation until we prepare for it. And that is conversational in nature. The fact is, it is all right to take fair and ethical advantage on behalf of your client. That's what we need to understand. That is not only all, that is our job, to recognize when you have the power hand and to play it well. And to play it well. Do I have any pinochle players in here? Never mind, I won't talk about running the entire game.
My parents played all the time.
Yeah. And if you've got the good hand, but you don't play your aces out first, you lose anyway.
That's like a spade.
So you gotta play the game well, keeping in mind that nobody wants to be embarrassed. Nobody wants to look bad. Nobody ever got ahead by pushing other folks around. In fact, oh gosh, can I ask you to help me out, Kathy? I'm gonna have to move your chair for just a minute. Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to come right here. Secure this row too. Okay. Face me. You can put your hands up. Thank you so much. Okay. Ready? Not bad for an old lady.
Oh, somebody get a picture.
It's on tape.
Oh, well, Kathy just asked me a question. She engaged in a little conversation. Why are we doing, oh, Kathy, I'm sorry. I should have made that clear first, shouldn't I? Maybe I should have had a little conversation first. So all I really wanted to do was I thought it would be advantageous for the class if you and I could show them how we get to this goal, this door, together at the same time, and we touch hands. Thank you. Now, Kathy, thank you. You can have your chair back. If I push her, what does she do? Thank you. We all know that. We know that. Now, it could be that Kathy had seen me as being a little older, a little more frail, and she might have, in fact, I think she might have
You're strong.
underestimated me
You're doing your push-ups.
initially, and she wasn't going to push me very hard. Or maybe I could have picked Dave to work with, in which case, if he didn't go easy on me, we not only wouldn't have hit the goal, we'd have been against that wall, correct?
Kathy had heels on.
You got
So,
that?
you went half of those, you were like, okay, I'm gonna push back, I really was pushing hard.
Now, I will say,
I know, and I couldn't, I was like,
if I had
My way out.
worked with a younger man, if I had picked Joe and I'd worked with Joe, here's what would have happened. Oh, you're younger than I am. Here's what would have happened. He probably would have let me push him up against that wall. But it doesn't mean he would have liked me, trusted me, or had any rapport with me once we got there. It means he doesn't trust me. He only capitulated because it seemed like the polite and right thing to do. Not because he felt like I deserved to get there. The point is that there is no good result when we push people around. Negotiating is not a bulldozing contest. The other unfortunate truth is some folks think it is. And then you don't know what to do when they're bulldozing at you. Maybe we need to talk about that a little bit. Because you see, in fact, okay, can I get another, Yvonne, can I get you to volunteer to help me for a minute? Come up here.
Loosen up.
It's good when I'm not gonna. Just one hand up here, and I want you to push against my hand, okay? Oh. I want you to try to guide my hand.
Guide or push?
But try to get my hand going where you want it to go.
Oh, okay.
What happens initially when you start to push my hand? What did I do?
You start moving it.
I gave way. I gave way. And that takes you a little bit, because I tell you to push, but I give way. But the minute I give way, what does that leave me in a position to do?
Move.
To guide the direction. That's an old, it really is. So sometimes giving a little space to people, giving them just a little room first, not pushing, but giving a little room when they start pushing. So if they start to push, giving a little, but getting your control back and not letting them push you around. So thank you, Yvonne. The fact is, if I had engaged in a push back at her, we would have reached an impasse, just like we did. Impasse isn't where any of us wanted to get. We would have, if one of us needs to take control, we often start doing that by allowing someone to have a little control first. That's often how you establish that. So the truth of the matter is that when we work with this, it is all right to take fair and ethical advantage in a negotiation. In fact, that's what's expected. But you don't do that by pushing people. Oops. Yvonne, you asked me this. How do you recognize a good negotiator? How do I know if I'm a good... Tell me, what traits do you think a good negotiator possesses? Give me the traits. Patience. Patience pays, speed kills. What else?
Dedication.
Good listen.
Dedication.
Dedication to...
I don't know how to say the rest. Dedicated to my client.
To your client or your
Yes.
client's objectives.
Uh-huh.
And inherent in that is understanding the objectives, crystallizing the objectives. I can't know when I've gotten there if I don't know where I'm going. What else?
Listening.
Where?
Is that what you just had to
Stay
say?
calm.
Stay calm.
Stay calm. Take the emotion out of it and stay calm.
Awareness, self-control.
Ah.
And I'm very aware of it with other people.
Self-control, awareness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Self-control.
Yeah.
They control their emotions. it's not personal. Oh, and by the way, it's not personal. And even if they call you names, Tatiana, it's not personal.
Right.
It's not personal, right? It is not personal. There, you hit a lot of these already. They're calm. They're patient. They know that they need to know. They know.
And I think one thing that's important there too is, and we teach this, is that you've got to make sure you're doing it for your client, not for you. If it's your only deal you have pending, and all of a sudden somebody says, we're thinking about pulling out, well, you know, what is your first thought? Is it about you or about doing the right thing for your customer?
Thank you so much. Yeah, and that's in the crystallization of the goals, understanding that in negotiations for your client, you are negotiating for your client. And it is understanding their goals and objectives.
Right.
I love that y'all already discussed this. It's understanding that knowledge of the other side, knowledge of the market, knowledge of your own client, knowledge of the goals is powerful. We set egos aside. We don't take it personally because it's not.
Well, you learn a lot about yourself in this business and what things you need to let go, because that'll kind of infiltrate your transaction, your personal stuff. When you feel like you're being pushed or put in a corner, then that comes out and you completely lose your buyer or your seller's goals, and then you start making it very personal. I'm not buying a house. I'm not even selling a house. I mean, I'm working on behalf of my client.
Did everyone hear what Kimberly said? Because I think that really is. Your own baggage comes with you. If you don't watch it, it will interfere. Oh, I like that. You'll trip over it, Lamont said. You'll trip over your baggage. So, excellent negotiators. They do know the contract. They do know what it says. They understand the forms they use. They understand the paperwork. They know what the most important issues are for their client. They also listen, and they don't jump to judgment. There is more than one way to accomplish goals. People who get set in how they're going to get to a certain place, I like to think of them as having their feet set in concrete. And it's hard, once I get my feet set in concrete, it's hard to knock me out of the concrete. And it's because I don't take my eyes and focus them on what it is I want to accomplish, rather than how I plan to accomplish it. Open-minded people recognize that you can accomplish goals in a lot of different ways. And if you shut up and listen to the other side, they might say something that's really workable that you never even thought of. But if you already know it all, oh, by the way, how many of you have worked with that agent who already knows it all?
How many of you are that agent?
No, that agent doesn't exist in this room.
Asking for a friend.
Oh, man.
Right.
It's he or she's sitting in your chair.
So, when you see someone who in a conversation is 80% asking and 20% answering, that's a good basis for being a good negotiator. When they are 80% telling and 20% asking, there's a real good chance they're telling Joe whether or not they support their client's position or anything else that they shouldn't be telling Joe.
Sorry, you said 80% asking, 20% what?
20% telling. So before you can prescribe a remedy for any situation, the way you find out what the situation, yeah, exactly, Yvonne, you find out what's going on. And in that way, we are like doctors. In that way, a great negotiator listens a whole lot more than they, you know, everyone says you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them proportion. No, use them way over the proportion of 2 to 1. 80% to 20% I like. I think that's a real good proportion. That's what, 4 to 1? would, they look at the statistical probability of success. And by this, I mean they look at market conditions. They look at, given what we are setting up, is there a good chance we can come to agreement? But they're constantly looking for the ZOPA. And they don't take it personally, and they don't take it personally, and they don't take it personally. And when they start to take it personally, they take a deep breath. Your mom used to tell you to count to 10. In the book Getting to Yes, the authors would tell you, go to the balcony. What they mean by this is, for just a moment, if you're starting to take things personally, you know when you're feeling triggered. Kimberly, you said it. You know, you feel yourself starting to go, that's just not sitting right with me. And you feel it. When that starts to happen, rather than reacting, the authors of Getting to Yes say, go to the balcony. And what they mean is you remove yourself just for a moment mentally from where you are. You take a small time out, and they're talking very small, and it's as though you go up and you overlook this like it's a play. You go up to a balcony, you overlook what's ensuing as though it's a play, and you think to yourself, is the reaction I'm about to have likely to get us closer to agreement or farther from it? Where am I with this? It's really a matter of slowing things down sometimes, just like you had to slow the other people down sometimes. These are things that you can do when you're working with an opponent. Sometimes you'll reach an issue on which you don't agree, and you had asked about, what do you do when they're just being a jackrabbit? That is what you said, right, a jackrabbit?
Yeah, sometimes I won't answer the call and then I'll call them back on my time when I've mentally prepared myself.
By the way, that's one of the best pieces of advice that I've seen written by someone too, on telephone negotiations. If you're not prepared,
I'd be like, no.
don't take the call right then. If you're gonna bite them, don't take the call. If they are, and by the way, if you're in the telephone negotiating and they get to the point where they are acting like a jackrabbit and you really don't want to deal, you don't feel like you are controlling yourself well, get a sudden emergency that you need to take care of. I am so sorry. We need to talk this through. I've got to take care of something. It shouldn't be long. Can I call you back within the hour? Can I call you back within, give a time frame, but get off the phone before you misbehave. But one thing that you can do is, if you're discussing a range of matters, instead of reaching an impasse because you can't come to agreement on one, you can agree to disagree for the moment on that one. Good example of this, once again, I hate to go to it again, it's your brokerage fee. You walk in the door and they want to know if you'll cut your fee before they know anything about what you do. And it's okay to say, you know what? Why don't we, if it's all right with you, before we talk about what I'm willing to accept and what I'm willing to do you mind if we talk about what the scenario might look like and what I'd be doing to earn the money? Is that too much to ask? But if they say it is, then you can say, well, okay, here's the thing. I'm going to give you a number, but I got to ask you for just one thing, Scott. Can we agree that if we disagree on this number, we're going to go ahead and look at the whole picture first and then agree to disagree? Set it aside is what that's often called. Set that one issue aside for later. So if it's a contract negotiation, and what's hanging them up is not the gutters, not having the gutters cleaned, it's having the French drain installed. That's what's hanging them up. And we can agree to disagree momentarily about the French drain, and let's work out the rest of this and see where we are.
Well, what about something like, this is the one I asked, where they're negotiating before they've even blah, 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 right? Is when they call you up and they're already trying to negotiate the price of a property or a rental, and they haven't even seen it yet.
Yeah,
You
what
know,
do you say to
They call
that,
you
Robin?
up, and particularly more so with rentals sometimes.
What will you
I think,
take?
You know,
What will you
they're
take?
like, well, you know this, right? Will you take so and so? And the first thing I always do, I'm like, have you seen the property? no, but, blah, 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 blah. And I always say, and then I feel like I'm cutting it off, which really I am, is I say to them, it's hard to negotiate on something you haven't seen yet. You know, let's look at it and then we'll talk about it. But it just burns me a new one, you know, where you're like, you're negotiating already, you know, you haven't even seen it.
You know what I loved about Robin's description is, first she said what they do, and we've all been there, when people want to negotiate before they even know what they're negotiating. And my husband is like you, he just wants to sock them in the nose. That's what he wants to do. He feels like saying to them, there is nothing to negotiate yet. You don't even know if you want the place. You haven't seen it. But
It's hard to negotiate.
that's what he wants
But
to
9
say.
times out of 10, they just leave, you know, and I'm, you know, they just.
You're better
Well-
off.
Okay, I'm
You're
done.
better off.
And I guess, and I'm thinking, okay, in the better scheme of things, I must be better off. 'Cause this
Is there a nice way that you can set it aside though? Is there a nice way to set it aside? Without being like my husband and saying, there's nothing to negotiate, you haven't even told me you want it yet. What do I have to negotiate with you? There's nothing to negotiate.
Not in the habit of negotiating with myself.
Yeah, not in the habit of negotiating. That's what he wants to say. Is there a nice way for you to say to someone who calls in and they say, listen, that's a 4-bedroom, can you get that to $2,350?
Yeah, I get it all the time.
So what do you say to them to defer answering without making them upset?
Send in an application or contract, because it could be somebody that wants it for a multiple amount of years or this or that, and it could be negotiated later, but
You know what?
we'll take a look at this place.
That's, I like what Susie said. You know what? You never know. You never
They could
know
have
what
perfect
someone will
credit,
do.
they can have
If it's
perfect
something
credit.
that you're really interested in, I think the first thing to do is for you to take a look at the property, and then, after that, if you want it, on your application, you can show the mitigating information, whatever you think would make the landlord feel that you would be entitled to that. Because that is a negotiation, and honestly, sometimes they'll consider it and sometimes they won't. And if it's overpriced to begin with, they'll probably consider it. And if they're worried how they're gonna make the next payment, and they haven't had a tenant in 3 months, they might consider it. So the fact is, but it really is, it's tone of voice, and it's not getting upset because they asked out of order. Yeah, it's don't take it personally, don't get upset about it, so they asked.
And then I think that as a almost new agent, I would be like, I made a lot of mistakes because I didn't know how to do things in the beginning. It's not the same to go and take the class to pass the exam than being a realtor. So sometimes when I get an agent that it's like, I feel like he's getting angry, I feel like intimidated, and I don't want to call again, you know. It's like, oh no, there is a lot of people from other countries too, like me, that sometimes we want to say something and I get nervous and I say another thing, you know, I say something different. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is not what I wanted to say. So understanding the other person too, I feel like being a little kind doesn't hurt.
I think that you're right, it doesn't hurt to be a little kind, it also doesn't hurt if you're the one who is being mistreated, to have enough backbone not to get upset and not to take it personally, but to say, it sounds like I'm getting on your last nerve, or it sounds like I'm irritating you, and I just want to try to work this out with you. That's all I want to do. You know, digging beneath the surface, because sometimes people are just being jackrabbits.
I often say to my clients, you know, a little kindness now could go a long way in this transaction. And we still have a long way to go. So, go ahead and fix the gutters or whatever, because we still,
Yeah, let's get it there.
And it does seem to center people when you say that,
I always ask them, as a buyer, we're helping you buy a house, would you want to have this same thing on your, just in a very polite way, put it back on them, like, you would ask for the same thing, probably more, like, I know we would ask for this, this, and this, and they're only asking for this, so let's just do this one little
It'll make them
Yeah.
feel a big win.
Yeah, makes them feel
Will
like
it be
it.
worth it to you if we
Yeah.
can settle this thing? That's what it takes to settle it. And just helping people to see what the options are that they're dealing with. Penny already talked about this. It is important to admire a job well done, even if we aren't done with it yet. You know, you have worked so hard. I appreciate everything you've done. Just a couple more hurdles. And that was part of what you were saying. We've got a ways to go,
Almost there.
a little kindness, and I think we can make this work. It is talking about relationships here, building relationships. And we said earlier that one of the things we can do is build relationships with agents before we're negotiating with them. What a thought. Because then they already trust you. You're not suspect. You know, it's just like when I think of for sale by owners, when you approach someone who's selling a house for sale by owner, the first moment that you approach them, you are suspect. If they don't already know you, you're suspect. And anything you say to them, they think, she's just saying that to get me to list my house. So even if you're giving them good advice, they don't believe you, because Becky, I just know what you're doing. You're just saying that to get me to think that I don't know what I'm doing. Once you have built trust and rapport with that person, they look at the same advice differently. They look at the same advice differently. So what time you spend building trust and rapport is essential. It is essential. What do you do to build trust with another agent if you don't already know them?
Be
One
responsive.
thing is you be polite. Kimberly said,
Someone
Carrie,
just say
Carrie,
hello.
did I say Carrie?
Carrie Lee,
Carrie Lee. Yeah, Carrie Lee just said. What else, Tom?
Said be responsive.
Thank you so much. That goes such a long way. Being responsive, even if your response is non-responsive. You know, I'm checking on it. I don't have it for you, you know. I am sorry. I'm sorry. I know you're looking for the information. I don't have an answer for you yet. Bear with me. Instead of saying, just get off my back.
I showed a not on the market house the other day. She sent me a text message, said, please remove your shoes. I forgot.
Oh, it's so bad.
I forgot. When I called her to give her the feedback that she asked for, I said, I have to apologize. I completely forgot about the shoes. She said, oh, that's okay, thank you for saying something. I should have made it more, let you know how important it was. I said, I will go back and Swiffer if you want. Okay, is that too much? But
You asked this group if they think it was too much.
But, so, just being truthful, being honest.
Yeah, the way you build trust with people is to demonstrate honesty, and the way you rip down trust that you may have already begun to build
How many
is to
agents
be
would say
dishonest
that?
about even a small thing.
Yeah.
Even a small thing. The difficult things for us to say to other agents, we need to say. If the loan application hasn't been made, we need to let them know the loan application. You know, whatever the difficult things are that we need to address, even if it means we didn't take off our shoes. What else do you do to build trust with an agent you've never met before?
Like you said before, there's always something good in everybody. So, I can think of one. I got a contract in recently, and, I wasn't sure if it would work, if it would work or not. But I said, that's a great loan officer that you're working with, a great company that you're working with. I'm so happy that you selected such a professional company.
Wow. You complimented their judgment. Complimented their judgment. And it was truthful because
Well, it was
that's
truthful.
what you knew.
Yeah, I saw something,
You saw and you caught them doing something right. What else?
Be professional from the beginning, just like ultra professional.
And when you say professional, Andre, help me with that.
Like if you're on the buyer side, like having your cover sheet, having the offer details, reach out, building like what's important to your seller, kind of establishing those questions that you're like, okay, this person really is taking their time. You know, just on the seller side, you know, having your documents right, having your, you know, little things like the listing spelled right and things like that. You know, having your emails composed the right way. Just like little things where like you're, you know, having everything from like a professional email address. Like I've seen a lot of people with like, it's not a professional email address.
Yeah, using your professional email address, but also you mentioned the paperwork. And who had mentioned that earlier? Yeah, Tom. Having that paperwork, just double check the spelling. It's small things that make people respect your integrity. If you leave off an important, pet peeve number 1, on a residential sale, don't have the disclosure disclosure, well, I'm sorry,
Uploading, yeah.
Or using old, outdated documents.
Yeah, using documents from 1908, you know?
No, check that it's contingent upon an inspection, but there's no inspection contingency addendum.
Or out of order documents when they send it back. Oh, that's the worst. I
Oh, when they
swear.
get to closing and they didn't realize the first page of the contract changed, and I asked for the 3% closing costs, but they didn't catch that. I didn't know they didn't catch that. It was clearly on there, so then when they went to closing, they're like, well, what do you mean your buyer's getting this closing cost? I mean, it's right.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Wow, they even moved to the front page and people are still
I
missing.
know, they completely missed it, and they're, you know, of course we went to closing, and the
So-
note was written on it.
Professional is paperwork, and it's also how we treat the other agent. It's also how we treat them.
Well, an icebreaker question. You know, how you doing, how you like bright? You know, that ought to break the ice.
Oh, that's opening up the can with that question
So
right
everybody goes
there.
like this for a little bit, and you go, okay, so now let's talk.
I do like that because that takes a little pressure off before you talk about the tough stuff. Yeah, let's all talk about bright where we may have some agreement. Let's find some common ground first.
As a person or human, do you think that complimenting yourself as a, you know, I have another agent that I'm working with, she's beautiful. When I saw her picture the second time, I'm like, okay, hello. You know, she's beautiful.
So we can't do that.
It doesn't work.
We get in trouble now.
What I would say is culturally.
You're hot, by the way.
I would say culturally,
Forget
in
the house.
today's society,
I want to work with that chick.
I would compliment an action or a possession, okay? An action like picking the right loan or picking a great loan officer. I would, or like really writing a clean offer. I would not compliment, I would not compliment appearance, even same gender, I would not compliment. And I know that sounds really awful, because, guys, I'm the one walking through a hotel who, my husband dies over it, because I walk up to some strange lady and I say, oh my gosh, where did you get those shoes? They're wonderful. And yeah, I really do that. But to do that in a business forum might not, now the shoes are at least a possession, it's not one's looks. But you do have to be somewhat careful about, you know, now their webpage is different. Oh wow, I visited your website. I'll tell you what, you really thought that through.
I have complimented, like, if I've been working with an agent before, I've seen them before, I will say, oh my gosh, I love your new business card pictures, they're really nice, stuff like that.
Yeah, which is not as much their appearance as their professional picture for a business card. But I think we have to be careful. In today's world, let's be just a little bit careful about, you know, don't be Joe Biden, okay. I didn't say a word. Didn't say a word. So, what we know is this, that the more time we can spend with them in a positive way, the better off we are. That's what we know. If we can keep things upbeat, if we can keep them positive, the more positive history lessons that you can put in their mind with you, the better off we all are. Key to understand what the other negotiator wants. And here's the thing, oftentimes, it's not what their client wants. Right. What do other negotiators sometimes want? Forget about this picture for a minute. You know as much as those words know it. What do other negotiators, what does the other agent want oftentimes?
Win.
They want to win sometimes. They want to, now, when you say they want to win, do they want the appearance of a win? Do they want to get the contract negotiated successfully? What do they consider a win?
They want to look
That
at
their client's happy.
If they can keep their client happy, oftentimes for some folks then, it's looking like the best agent in the world to their client. But now we have to think about their picture of what a great agent would do for a client. Because if they don't understand real negotiating, and they think their job is to be a gladiator for their client, that may need some attitude adjustment. And I'm not saying that you can adjust it all by yourself, but there are things you can say that do lead them in that direction. You obviously understand, you know, I'm listening to you, and it seems to me you obviously understand the importance of market conditions as well as what your client wants to do on this. And you know, I'm impressed by that, Robin, because not every agent I work with gets it. Not every agent gets it about that.
How about just giving them that little ego pat that they asked you for? Like, I just sold my first listing, and the phone call for the offer came to me and said, "Of course you know who I am. You see me everywhere." And I said, "Of course." And then I went and asked my broker, "Who is this?"
You say, who is this?
But if they ask for that,
Yeah.
I will tell you that, like you,
I don't care.
like
Which they
you,
did.
if they feel that I should know who they are, I probably would do exactly what you did.
It works.
And I probably, now, if I got caught at doing that and they discovered I didn't know them, then I'm dishonest. So there is a risk. Does everyone get the risk? But I would do it because I think it's not likely I'm going to get caught at that one. I really do. Of course I've heard of you.
It was a nod to the queen, so I had to give her a
Yeah.
little nod, right?
And what you didn't want to say is, gosh, I'm so new, I've never even heard of you, but that's okay.
Right.
Because that doesn't help your case either.
Turns out my broker had a 16-year working relationship with her, so she knew that that was going to be one of the things that she wanted me to know who she was. So I was like, of course.
Of course. And I will tell you that if I do know that someone does have a reputation in the area for having done a lot of business, I will, even though I have not met them and might not have even thought it, I will say, you know what? I will tell you, who doesn't feel like they know you? You may not recognize me, but just from the promotion you've done over all the years. Who
Yeah, I've
doesn't?
definitely done the I'm so excited of, finally gonna get to do a deal with you.
Yeah, that works.
So,
She
but
must
again,
have liked me though, because they asked me to work with them after the deal was done.
there you
So I
go.
said I must have impressed the queen.
That's right, they want you on the team now. So, the fact is, you think about what it is you do to invest in positive experiences. But the most important ones are typically being honest, being responsive, and it doesn't mean that you can't ask for things that others might not have asked for. That's not incumbent. And it doesn't mean you have to apologize for what your client asked for. What you want to do is have a sustainable, positive relationship. What you need to do is sometimes subordinate your own ego to theirs if they don't know that trick. How easy is it for you to subordinate your ego?
It's gotten easier the longer I've been in this business.
Do you understand that? Really, what is the big deal about it? Let somebody else be the queen.
If they needed that bad, give it to them.
I just want to get the job done. I just want to get the job done. I love this, only because I know the lady who wrote most of this material, and she is someone I consider to be a dear friend, and she is just so funny in person. If the other person is a legend in their own mind, and that may be what you were referencing.
No, I was pointing that way, not towards you.
Oh, okay.
We're good.
You know that you need to give deference where deference can be given without acquiescing, without losing ground. Understand that in our business, sometimes we do more than our share. I'm sorry. Sometimes we do more than our share. What's your goal?
Client will hire you next time.
There are certain psychological realities for every agent, okay? They have to care about the results for them to work with you. But most agents do care about results. The problem is, it's helping them to reframe which results they care about. When I say reframe, if the result they're initially looking for is to beat up you on behalf of their client, because they want to be the best in the world for their client, it's helping them to reframe the image of what really a successful agent does and compliment them when they're doing the right thing. Most of us don't like surprises. Yeah, I loved it when Robin used that word, surprise, and we all went, yeah, shock is what it is. Most of us don't like surprises. So warming the ground for people, reminding them that we've got an inspection, not dropping this horrible surprise on them. Most people feel they are trustworthy. I'm just saying. Most of us feel we are trustworthy. We're honest. You should trust us. Acting from the outset as though you don't trust me will make me upset. We want to be trusted. We want to feel relied upon, which can be difficult at times when you're doing half of my job. People want to be listened to without being interrupted, even when you know what they're about to say. Are any of them long-winded?
Yeah.
Do any of them take a very circuitous route to get where they're going verbally? I mean, around the barn and back and up the hill and down the hill, and they don't get to the point? Well, the fact is, sometimes you invest time in letting people voice their own thoughts rather than taking the ball away and voicing them for them. People generally want to be treated politely and nicely. Some people want you to treat them like royalty. Fortunately, not everyone wants to be treated that way. Sometimes the other agent just needs for you to tell them how to position the request your client is making, how to defend what you're telling them to go ask their, whether it's help with the CMA, whether it is help with understanding how normal the contingency is, or how realistic it is to expect that we're going to do this little bit of work. Whatever it is, they may need your help in putting together. So brainstorming with them to help them in defending the position. Nobody likes to be told take it or leave it. And some people will react to that by saying,
Leave it.
leave it. Don't bully me, leave it. And you know what? I was guilty of it. I told you the story. My client said leave it, and I said, yay! Instead of going back and rekindling the fire. Most people don't want to enter into highly risky situations. Most people
Can I
don't.
back up a little bit more about the take it or leave it? Because I feel like I have encountered some agents lately that have been like, this is it. This is our bottom line, or this is all we're gonna give you, and they're, you know, just so ready to turn and walk. There's some good strategies for coming off
Okay,
that.
so someone has, forget about you don't issue ultimatums, because if we can keep them talking, we can maybe come to agreement. But you've just been issued an ultimatum, and the agent says, listen, this is it. Bottom line, this is what they're able to do.
All right, let me go talk to my client.
First off, sure, I'll be glad to talk to my clients about it. Don't argue it with them. What are you gonna do? Say, don't give me that stuff. Don't give me that ultimatum stuff. See, nobody likes to be issued ultimatums. Don't get pulled into an argument about it. Who cares? So they issued an ultimatum, and what you'd like to do is punch them in the nose, because that's rude and it's not necessary. The fact is, all you